we all spent years, right, in those classrooms taking tests and writing papers, all that stuff. But, like, have you ever stopped and actually thought about why we do all that?
I think so. It's a good question.
Is it just about, like learning things, or is there something else going on?
Yeah.
Something deeper, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think so.
Well, we're diving into this book today called Education Through the Ages, Lessons Humanity Won't Shut Up About, but Should Probably Learn.
Oh, okay.
And, well, it turns out that, like, the history of education, it's not really about, like, dusty old textbooks,
Right.
It's more about, like, power dynamics.
Yeah.
The kind of stuff that, still shapes our world today.
Absolutely. I think what's really fascinating is how, like, from the very beginning, education has been all, like, mixed up with this idea of control.
Control, yeah.
Like, take ancient Sumeria, for example.
Okay.
Around 3000 BCE.
Wow.
Their schools, they weren't about, like, creating well-rounded people.
Right.
They were designed to just, like, churn out these scribes who could basically, like, keep the empire running.
So it's less about thinking for yourself and more about, like, just being a cog in the machine.
Exactly. Imagine, like, spending your whole life just, like, copying clay tablets, memorizing, like, tax codes, and living in fear of the Umiya, these teacher figures.
Look at the Umiya.
Basically, they were, like, the enforcers of rote learning.
Oof. That doesn't sound like a very fun classroom to be in.
No, not really.
That's pretty different from how we picture, like, ancient Greece, though.
Right.
With all those, like, philosophers and big ideas and all that.
Right.
That's where it gets, like, kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because even in ancient Greece, it seems like education was still, like, mostly about keeping things the way they were.
Absolutely.
Like Plato's Academy, for example.
Yeah.
That was only for elite men.
Exactly. Very exclusive.
And let's not forget about what happened to Socrates.
Right.
Sentenced to death just for asking questions.
A pretty stark reminder that even in societies that, they say they're all about, like, intellectual freedom, there are limits.
Big time.
Yeah.
So basically, whether you were, like, a Sumerian scribe,
right,
or, like an Athenian philosopher,
yeah,
it seems like education back then was more about, like, serving the people in charge than it was about, like, actually empowering individuals.
That's a good point.
Did that pattern, like, did that continue into the Middle Ages?
Oh, absolutely. During the medieval period, education was basically, it was all happening in monasteries.
Okay.
And knowledge.
Yeah.
That was seen as something that, like, needed to be controlled.
By the church.
Exactly.
I mean, can you imagine, like,
right, spending
years and years just copying, like, religious texts by hand?
Yeah. I mean, talk about a serious information bottleneck.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And I guess that, like, that lack of access to information, it probably, like, really slowed things down for a long time.
I think so.
Centuries, even.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a contrast to how much information we have today, right?
It really is.
Thanks to the internet.
But it makes you wonder, like, even in the digital age, we still have that same question.
Yeah.
Who controls what we know and why?
The big question.
Definitely a big one.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to be digging into next time.
All right.
We'll be exploring how, like, the printing press, right, and then the Industrial Revolution, like, totally changed education.
Yeah.
And how those changes, they really set the stage for all the challenges and the opportunities that we're dealing with today.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So until then.
Until then.
Keep those brains buzzing.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon.
Sounds good. Welcome back.
So before the break,
yeah,
we were talking about how, for, like, centuries,
right,
knowledge was like this closely guarded thing.
Oh, yeah.
First by, like, empires and then the church.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, like, when did this whole idea of education, like, for everybody even come about?
It's a really good question.
Yeah, I think most people would probably assume that, like, free public education, like, it came from this, like, super noble idea.
Okay.
About, like, empowering everyone with knowledge.
Right.
But our source, like, it's saying something different.
Yeah, it is. It's a little more complicated than that, Like the rise of free public education in the early 1900s.
Okay.
I mean, it was a big deal, obviously.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all just, like, pure altruism,
Right.
Government started to see it as, like, a really powerful tool to like shape citizens.
To shape citizens. Okay.
Yeah, to create, a workforce that could read, that would, follow the rules and like share a certain set of values.
So in a sense, they were trying to create a society that was a bit more like manageable.
Exactly. Precisely. I mean, think about it.
Okay.
If you can like teach people certain beliefs, certain behaviors through education, then you can like basically create a social order that's more, predictable and harmonious.
That's kind of like social engineering, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a big theme throughout history.
And it makes you think about like what happened in Nazi Germany.
Right.
They literally like rewrote the textbooks.
Yeah, it's a chilling example of how, education can be misused, can be weaponized.
Yeah, right.
To control people.
Controlling what people learn, controlling the narrative.
Right.
And getting rid of like dissenting voices,
Right. Squashing anyone who disagrees. They were able to like indoctrinate whole generations.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty stark reminder, I think, that even in places that seem, enlightened, education can be used to manipulate people.
To control them.
To control them.
Yeah. It's almost like a cautionary tale.
It is.
Like it's reminding us to be careful about like who is controlling the information that we're getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even in like free societies.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just limited to like totalitarian regimes either.
Oh, right.
Our book actually talks about how like the Pledge of Allegiance in the U.S.
Okay, yeah.
It actually started as like a marketing ploy to sell flags.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how something that seems so like normal can have these like hidden meanings,
Exactly. And the Pledge of Allegiance, it's a perfect example of how you can use education to like subtly shape people's beliefs to encourage, conformity.
It's making me rethink everything I thought I knew about school.
It's a fascinating history.
But even if we forget about like straight up propaganda, the 1900s, they were also marked by these huge struggles for equality.
Right.
And education, right?
Absolutely.
We can't talk about education without talking about segregation.
Right. You're absolutely right.
It's such a huge part of the story.
Yeah. And even though there were some, big legal victories like Brown versus Board of Education, which basically said that like segregation in public schools was not okay. The fight for like equal access to good education, it's still going on today.
Yeah, it really feels like we've made progress, on paper at least.
Right.
But in reality, things are still so unequal.
Exactly.
The book talks about how like where you live and how schools are funded.
Yeah.
They make a huge difference.
They really do. And it means that, where a child lives can actually determine the quality of their education.
That's pretty messed up.
It is. It's a stark reminder that, we still have a long way to go when it comes to like truly equal education.
And now on top of all of that, we've got this whole digital age thing going on.
Yeah.
The internet, I mean, it's put so much information at our fingertips.
Right.
Which seems like a good thing.
It does.
But I bet it comes with its own set of problems.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a mixed bag.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So where do we even like start with all of this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we're going to dig into next.
Okay, so after the break, we're going to be talking about the digital age.
Right.
And whether the internet has, actually made knowledge more democratic.
Yeah.
Or if it's just created new ways to like control and create inequality.
Exactly.
Sounds like a big one.
Yeah. It's a big topic.
Can't wait.
All right.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the history of education, right?
We have. It's been quite a journey.
From like ancient Sumeria all the way to today.
Yeah.
And one thing that's like super clear is that this question of like who controls knowledge.
Right.
And how they use it. That's like been a constant source of tension.
Yeah.
Throughout history.
It really has.
I feel like that tension is like even bigger today.
I think so.
With the internet and everything.
Right.
I mean, we've got access to like more information than ever before.
It's unprecedented.
But just because we can access information doesn't mean we're like actually empowered by it.
That's true.
In fact, you could say that the internet has just created like new forms of control.
Oh, yeah.
New ways to manipulate people.
Definitely. Think about like how much information we see every day.
Right.
It's overwhelming.
It's a lot.
And it's hard to like tell what's real, you know?
Yeah, what's true, what's not.
Right, exactly. Like what's a reliable source?
Yeah.
What's misinformation?
Right. What's like just straight up propaganda.
Exactly. And the book actually calls this a snowball effect.
Snowball effect.
Where like this unverified information,
right.
It just spreads so fast online.
Right, right.
And it creates this like atmosphere of uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're like back where we started.
Right.
Where it's just a few people controlling the information we see.
Exactly. A select few, like tech companies and algorithms.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you think about like who's really shaping what we see, what we read,
right.
what we believe online.
Yeah, and why are they doing that?
Right, exactly.
Are we like really in control of our own learning?
Right.
Or are we just being like led around by forces that we don't even understand?
It's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought. But okay, even if we like accept that that's happening,
yeah.
What can we actually do about it?
Right. What can we do?
How do we like navigate all of this and make sure that education is actually like empowering people?
Right. Yeah.
And not just like reinforcing the same old power structure.
It's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are no easy answers.
Right.
But I do think that like our deep dive so far,
yeah,
it's given us some clues.
Okay, like what?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we like really need to develop critical thinking skills.
So it's not enough to just like have access to the information.
Right.
We need to know how to like filter it.
Exactly. Yeah. To evaluate it.
Things for ourselves.
To question things, question assumptions.
Right.
And form our own opinions, you know.
Based on like solid evidence.
Exactly.
We got to move beyond just like memorizing facts.
Right.
And taking standardized tests.
Yeah, because those things, they often like prioritize obedience over actually thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
We need to focus more on creativity.
Okay.
Problem solving.
Right.
Adaptability, you know.
The things that will actually matter in the real world.
Exactly, in a world that's constantly changing.
That makes a lot of sense, but like how do we actually make that happen?
Right.
How do we like put that into practice?
It starts with each of us, you know.
Okay.
We have to like challenge the status quo.
Oh.
By asking questions.
Okay.
Seeking out like different perspectives and having, you know, real conversations.
Right.
We can support, you know, educational programs that teach critical thinking and creativity.
Yeah.
And we can like fight for policies that make education more equitable.
Right. So that everyone has a chance.
Exactly.
It's not just about like changing schools.
Right.
It's about changing how we think about learning and knowledge in general.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about realizing that education is not like a finish line.
Right.
It's a lifelong journey.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So like if knowledge is power, let's all empower ourselves and each other to be like lifelong learners.
Yeah, exactly.
To think critically, to be engaged citizens.
I love that.
The future of education and the future of like society itself kind of depends on it, right?
I think so, absolutely.
That's a good note to end on. Thanks for taking us on this journey.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, you know, we hope this episode has made you think.
Yeah.
And maybe inspired you to keep learning and exploring these questions.
For sure.
The journey never really ends.
Right? It really doesn't.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
Yeah, keep learning.